Talks with Brenda and Kathy. Today we are so excited to have our friend on, and she's a sports superstar and a business entrepreneur, and all of it is heart centered. She's achieved many accolades in both her sports and her business. She's written 2 books and co authored another book. And she's had many awards and recognitions. And she's passionate about personal growth and empowering others to reach their full potential. So today we're going to be learning from Phebe Trotman. Hi, Phebe.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Brenda. Thank you guys for having me on. As I was saying before, it's so great to just connect with you guys. I know we're connected. We chit chat here and there behind the scenes, but it's nice to be able to actually sit and chat with you guys.
That's great. Yeah. So I know this story, but a lot of our viewers may not. You started out as a professional sports athlete in soccer. And from there, you went into businesses, real estate being one, network marketing being another. Can you give us your background story on how you went from, or how and why you went from the sports to business?
Yeah, you know what? It's so interesting. Life takes so many twists and turns. So basically, yeah, I was playing soccer. I was working full time. So I graduated from Simon Fraser University. I have a degree in kinesiology. And funny enough, though, I was working at a computer company. And anyhow, and so I was really uninspired at my job. I didn't really enjoy it. I wasn't learning, I wasn't growing. And so I started a bunch of side projects while I was working full time. One of them being learning how to invest in real estate. I started my own coaching company with a teammate of mine, teaching kids how to play soccer. And so just a bunch of kind of side hustles, if you will. And my whole plan was when the income from one of those or all of those was enough that it was higher than my full time position, I would transition over. And I like to say sometimes, like when we don't make a move, God will make that move for us,
Mm-hmm.
because the company I was working for actually went bankrupt and I was laid off. And so when I was laid off, it was kind of one of those crossroad moments, if you will, kind of what's next. And, I went through, and I always encourage people to do this, is just kind of look forward in your life. And it's, what do you want your life to look like? And when I was laid off, that's actually what I did. I kind of paused and went, what do I want my life to look like? And when I looked forward, although there was many different paths I could choose, I decided to build a network marketing business. And so when I was, building that coaching business, if you will, a friend of mine introduced me to a tool and I started using the tool. I wasn't really planning on building it as a business, but then when I was laid off, and then I looked at it and thought, okay, well, this kind of aligns with what I want for my future, and decided to build that as a business. And it was a fun journey, very bumpy to start, very, very bumpy to start. And then eventually it started to smooth out once I started following the system they had in place, and then was able to create results and got a chance to work with some incredible people.
And that's great. And that's probably where the title of your books came from too. Never quit on a bad day, because we all have those days and we have to power through them. And you've taught me a lot about setting goals, both in personal and professional life. Can you just expand on why it's so important for people to set those daily goals, monthly goals to get their
Absolutely. Yeah.
life going?
Well, I think goals give us something to focus on, right? At the end of the day, it gives us a target. It gives us something to work towards. It adds an element of fun, if you will. I always say, like, add a reward to your goals too. So when you hit it, you have something to celebrate, because it's a process, right? And at the end of the day, it does give you something to look forward to, that you're working towards, that you can focus on the process to get there. Because at the end of the day, otherwise it's like, well, what are you working towards? Is there something? And goals can be in any, like, it doesn't have to be only a business goal, as you just shared. Like, I'm really big on personal goals as well, because it's not always tied to work. It's not tied to business. It's just tied to your own fulfillment. And there's something to be said when you can set a goal and you can work towards it and you can achieve that goal, just that sense of personal fulfillment, that and confidence. It helps you breed confidence because you're working towards something. And so I really encourage people to set goals, again, whether it is monthly, daily, and break it down. You might have a bigger goal and then break it down into smaller goals and smaller action steps, and really reward yourself and give yourself that pat on the back when you do accomplish those tasks that'll lead to the ultimate success of accomplishing your goal.
That's awesome. Yeah, we need to always pat ourselves on the back, because gratitude is important to share with everyone else, but it's also important to be grateful for what we have and what we have
Absolutely.
accomplished.
Absolutely. You've got to fill your tank, right? And so, and recognizing that, everyone, there's always something you can celebrate, that we got up today, right? Like that's something worth celebrating and be grateful for. It's so important to celebrate the small stuff. I always say that, if you want to celebrate the harvest, you have to celebrate planting the seed. So celebrate those little accomplishments, because they will lead to the bigger ones as well.
Yes, for sure they do. I'm grateful that I met you, and then you led me on this path of creating a life of gratitude, because before that I really didn't think much about it, but my whole life has changed since I was been using the same tool as you were talking about, and sharing gratitude with people, and it's made a huge difference in my life, my friends' life, everyone. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm grateful for that tool as well, because it opened up so many incredible relationships, including you two. It changes your perspective. Again, just focus, being able to reach out to other people and let them know that they matter. I was saying the other day, like happy mail, it's more than just you're sending something to them and they're happy, but you're also happy too. And so it's a ripple effect of just kindness that continues on when we do those kind gestures.
True. And it helps me even more than just emotionally, physically. I could feel my blood pressure dropping when I was writing cards of gratitude to people. So it affected my physical body as well. Just like it's healthy physically and emotionally and every other way. So
Absolutely.
really, like, I love to do that. So I'm really grateful for that. Also, can you give us some tips on how how you came up with the idea of your book series, Don't Quit on a Bad Day? How did that come about?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think a big piece of it is being open, and I've always been quite an open person, if you will. And when I say open, open in the sense of I know like my purpose and what brings me joy and fulfillment. How I do that might take different paths, if you will. And so I was with some good friends, and we were kind of chatting, as entrepreneurs do. What's next? What are you working on? What are you excited about? And I was sharing, that it's been on my heart for several years to create something that will encourage and inspire people. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I felt that was on my heart to create something, especially because I've been encouraged and inspired by so many people along my journey. And so I shared this with them, and they're the ones who suggested that I should write a book. And I kind of chuckled, because I've heard that a couple times over the years, and I'm always like, I don't know, I'm not really sure, And they really flipped it on me in a way where they turned it around to say, and it's a longer story, I'll give the short version, but they kind of said, a book isn't really about you, it's about the people you can help and inspire and encourage. And so when they said it in that way, that's when then I was more open to the idea of it. And I said to them, well, if I'm going to write a book, it has to do two things. Like, number one, it definitely has to help and encourage people. And in terms of the topic that I would be writing about, number two, I have to feel passionate about it. And when I was simmering that night, I was kind of simmering on the idea of like, well, what would I write a book about? And the month before, I was inducted into the Coquitlam Sports Hall of Fame, and they had an induction ceremony. And in that ceremony, the interviewer, he asked, what has sport given me? And I shared, all the incredible lessons that I've learned through sport, and incredible highs and championships at all levels and personal accolades and so many incredible lows. And I also shared, though, the only reason I was able to have all those highs were because of the lows: getting cut from a team, sitting on the bench, only, coming back from an injury, losing in a championship match, like all these things, and working through it is the only way I was able to have the highs. And so when I was kind of brainstorming on what I would write a book about, that's when it hit me. And I was like, that's what I want to write a book about, is like the story behind the story. Because, over the years, in terms of building a network marketing business, so many times people would be like, well, look at that person's results and look at that person. Then it's like, yeah, but you don't know all the stuff that they went through to get to that result. And so it really just kind of came full circle with wanting to combine kind of my experience in network marketing and business and investing and all of it, as well as on the soccer field. And so that's when I was like, that's what I want to write a book about. And then the saying, never quit on a bad day, I had heard it, many, many, many years ago. And I like to say, I do this with God. I'm like, okay, open the door or close the door. And so I said, okay, God, if I'm supposed to write these books, open the door, and the domain, the URL, neverquitonabadday.com will be available. Or close the door, it won't be available. Now, I fully expected it to be not available. So I was like, well, I put it out there. Okay. And then I was surprised. I came home, it was available. And so I was like, okay, that's the open the door. And then it kind of grew from there in terms of, starting off as the thought process was one book. And then as I started brainstorming, simmering on it, then I realized it's actually more than just one book. It's a series. And so here we are, 2 books in, and it's been incredible.
And what I like about the books is that they're short stories. Mm-hmm. So if a person doesn't have a lot of time, they can read a short story that's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 pages and set it aside and come back and read about another person and their story, and you can just get through the book very easily that way. So while you were networking, you met all these wonderful entrepreneurs. So was it difficult to get them to tell their stories?
I'm just so grateful for the contributors in both books, because everyone has been so gracious and kind. And so with the first book, I made a list of people who have personally, that have inspired me over my journey. And I reached out. Some, the timing didn't work. Some, life happens and it wasn't the right time for, them to share their story. And others, it was great time and they were open to it. And so, and the book really came together in the way that it should. All the stories, I was a little bit, because in interviewing, having these conversations, it's like I wanted it to be very diverse in terms of people's experience and backgrounds, because I truly believe that, someone may not connect to my story. However, there's someone else's story in that book that they'll connect with. And it was that's one of the things that's been beautiful in hearing the reviews and feedback from people, is everybody's grabbing something from different stories. And if you read the book at different times in your life, different lessons will pop out to you. And so everyone was great in terms of contributing their story and being open to it, because when I approached them, I shared, this is why I would like to create this book, because I do believe it needs to be out there in terms of some of those challenges that people go through. And more importantly, what do they do to work through those challenges? Because the challenge may not be the same. Like what I'm going through, what Kathy, Brenda, we may not be going through the exact same challenge. There might be similarities, or it could be totally different. At the end of the day, though, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for you. It's a challenge for you. And so if something that I've been doing in terms of maybe a gratitude practice in a certain way, if I share that with you, even though the challenge may not be the same, the lesson of how to apply this gratitude challenge or this gratitude practice, if you will, could be applicable to what you're going through and could help. And so that was really important to me, that it wasn't just a book about, hey, this is their story, but there's a lesson at the end of every chapter that a reader can pull to learn from, to help them, to equip them really for their journey, if you will.
That's what I love too, because personal growth is so important. And we should continue that for our whole lifetime.
If people haven't heard about Phoebe's book, it is Never Quit on a Bad Day. And what I found really helpful and inspiring in these books are the stories, but they all had bad days that led to good things. I love that you have these exercises in here, like you have where you have to reflect and think. And I also love the quotes. I love a lot of the quotes in here. So, people, it's available on Amazon. This is the first book. She's got another one.
Phoebe's got the second.
There's a second for sports, right?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because Okay, the first one features stories from thriving entrepreneurs. That being said, it's not necessarily a business book. This second book features stories from accomplished athletes. And that being said, it's not a sports book, if you will. Like, you can gain wisdom from both books. Both books have some overlapping lessons, but a lot of different lessons are included in here as well. And what Brenda was referring to is the section called Reflections on Resilience, which is at the end of every chapter, which really is a workbook section for the reader. Have a pen, have a highlighter, and go through it. So as much as it's funny, because a lot of people are like, oh, so this book is for athletes, right? And I'm like, well, yes, but also no. It's really for anyone who has a goal and dream and knows that there's going to be bumps along those goals on the road to accomplishing those goals and dreams. It's written from, yes, the athletes are sharing their stories, and some of them are related directly to their sport. Some of them aren't. That being said, the lesson, again, it's really understanding that the lesson and is applicable to anyone at any point, because again, the challenge may not be the same. It might not be, getting cut from a team. However, what you did to work through those emotions, because the emotions there's going to be parallels in terms of the emotions that we feel when we're going through tough times.
Yeah. Even if it's not being cut from a team, you might go to work and you might not get, there might be a vote or something. You might not get in on that. You might not get selected by your peers. And so the lessons would be the same.
Absolutely. And again, it's really just, I'm really big on like pulling lessons from you. We can learn through, there's so many different ways we can learn, if you will, from things that happen to other people. Again, it might not be the same situation, but what can we learn from it? What did they do to move through those emotions and work through those emotions? And that's what we can take out of it to apply to our own lives and our own journey.
Yeah. And part of that is learning to apply it to yourself. Because that's a whole other lesson too, that, okay, well, that was that person, but it really doesn't apply to me, but really it does apply to you in a different way, just like you said. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the reflections on resilience, that was something that was really important to me to include, is that sort of time for the reader to reflect, because I truly believe we're all extremely resilient. We really are. Sometimes we just don't remember we are. Sometimes we downplay some of the stuff that we've gone through or grown through. And so the reflections on resilience section is really for that reader to reflect on their own journey, to think back to some of the stuff that they've gone through or grown through, or to learn, here's an idea, something you can apply to your own life to help you in this next stage of your life. Because I find I love to read, and some of my favorite books are books where it's challenged me to really grow, to think of my own, journey, if you will. And so that was just something that was really important to me, because then you can read one chapter at a time if you want. Some people are doing like a little like group study, if you will, with it, where every week they do one chapter and then they go through the reflections on their own and then come back together. And so that's really nice to see how people are applying it in different ways for their own, whatever can help is really my goal with the books.
That's a great idea. Brenda, we need to do that as a group. Go through them and then discuss them. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you. Someone else came up with it. That was not.
Also, with the 2 books, Phoebe, you also have a workbook as well. Can you talk a little about that?
I do. So one activity that was really powerful for me that I went through years ago was all about your dream day or your perfect day, if you will. And so what I did, and so I went through this activity years ago, and over the years I've kind of enhanced it, added it, tweaked it, if you will. And so in the first book, we taught at the end of every chapter is reflections on resilience. There's the QR code. And really, I just encourage all the contributors to share a word of encouragement. And in my short video, I talk about that activity and how it was so transformational for me. And one of the things that came out of it was people, messaging, well, how do I do it, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I created the workbook, because it covers, really, it's all about dreaming. It's all about stretching yourself. How do you create this dream day, if you will? And it ties back to what we talked about with goal setting. And even when I was laid off, because one of the things that I did was I was very intentional. I knew there were certain elements of my life that were really important to me. One was controlling my time and just being able to be there for friends and family. And so I've really structured my life in that way to make sure that that's something that I have, if you will. And so the workbook is really about, what does a dream day look like to you, Kathy? and you, Brenda, because we're all going to have our own version of dream day, and it's split in a way where it's helping you go through different areas of your life, because it's like, well, who are you around from a relationship standpoint? What do those relationships look like? What are your physical environment? What's your health like? What is your business or your financial section of that look like? And so there's 4 different exercises in the workbook to really help people dream, because again, one of the things I've realized in meeting so many people and talking to a lot of people have stopped dreaming. And one of the review that I got that just meant so much was with the first book. Someone was saying it really forced her to dream again, and she realized how much she stopped dreaming. And so that just meant a lot. And so the workbook's really there to help people dream bigger dreams and to really reflect on what does that look like. Because the other thing, I just want to throw this in there, that I've realized is a lot of times we have this idea of what success should look like because of media and this person, that person, and anyways, and one of the things that I realized over my journey is I had grabbed onto this version of what success looked like, but it wasn't really what success needed to look like for Phebe Trotman, if you will. And so I just encourage people to, be intentional with that and realize, like, well, what are you working towards? Is that something you really want? Like, does that make your heart sing? Or is it that someone else has said, well, this is what success looks like, so you're going after that? And that's really also what that workbook is really for, to really make that person sit and challenge and go, well, what does that look like for me? What does a dream day really look like for me? Because again, we're all going to have different versions of that.
Yeah.
That's what we call in the medical field. That's what we call a deeper dive.
Love it. Yeah, it does. And I encourage people listening in, like, really think about what does success look like for you? What's your definition of success? Because a lot of times we just grab onto what we think it should be, but if it might not be what success should be like for you. What does a dream day look like for you?
Yeah, that's true. I've done that activity too, and I find it difficult because it is hard to match it to myself. Like, I can look around and somebody lives in a big house, the swimming pool or something. Well, that looks good. Okay, well, I'd like that. Or, traveling. Okay, well, that I'd like to be able to travel, but I don't like to travel, so that wouldn't be for me. It was like
Exactly. But
you have to make it for yourself.
But imagine, okay, so if you sat there and you designed your whole life around traveling, like you're like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, and everything was towards that, you're not being fulfilled by that, because that's not, if you don't like to travel. Whereas for me, I'm like, let's go. Where can I go? Like, I'm all about it, right? And that's one of the things that I find so many times is people will put on, if I was, coaching or we're working together and I'm like, okay, well, where's the first trip you want to take? Well, that's not going to inspire you to work hard in your business, because it doesn't align with what you actually want. And so that's something that's really important, is to ask yourself those questions. Well, what do I really want? And work towards what you want for you, Kathy, and what you want for you, Brenda, versus what I would want for me in terms of being able to travel or do different things, right?
Yeah.
I remember being asked a while ago what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a nurse. And I said, I've accomplished all that. Now what? Right. And I was so grateful to be introduced to network marketing. It was just life changing, and so many amazing people I've met. And yeah, you get to that crossword road, like you were saying, like, now what? Right? I've accomplished what I want to. Now what do I do? And this opened up a whole new realm for me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, you just have to build that dream bigger.
Yep.
Absolutely. Stretch yourself, right?
Isn't that what they say in Texas? Go big or go home. Dream big. Dream big. Right?
And no dream is too big. That's what I'm
No.
learning.
Yeah,
You can put
absolutely.
it out there, and it'll come true if you believe it and dream it and work towards it.
Absolutely. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Also working towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't
So,
just lay in bed and say, okay, I want this to happen and this to happen and this to happen magically. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you got to take some steps forward. I mean, it can happen faster than you think because, again, that belief, right, is so important as well. Having that belief and that knowing that you can accomplish it and then start moving towards it. And that's been like incredible, just seeing how when we start to move in purpose and we start to move in action, how things can just start to align well for us. And you start to see things differently as you start moving forward towards your goals and dreams.
And it's magical sometimes how it happens. Yeah. So Brenda, you were going to say something.
Have you ever thought of doing a book, Never Quit on a Bad Day in Healthcare?
It's funny that you bring that up. Yeah.
The nurses.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I sort of have a vision for 4 books, if you will, like the first 4. Like I do have that written down and the direction for those. That being said, if because there are so many different directions it can go in after that I'm being open to, and I feel like if that is the next step after those 4 to continue on, whether it's healthcare, first responder, like there's so many different ways it can go in terms of and I have had a couple people actually approach me with different ideas for it. So, I'm open to it. We'll see.
It's almost
Realtors,
that with
mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
with every career. Like when I was teaching, there were many days where I just wanted to throw my hands up in the air and leave and quit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. But it would have been good to have that book to kind of guide my way. Okay, this happened. Now what?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So on that note, we're getting close to our half an hour. So if you would like to purchase Phebe Trotman's book, we'll post the link down below. There's 2 of them and the workbook, so technically 3 of them. Please go on Amazon and either type in her name, Phebe Trotman. We will post the link down below, and it's Never Quit on a Bad Day. So thank you so much, Phebe. Oh my God, it was so amazing to be able to spend half an hour with you and just chat about your amazing book. I love this book.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for having me on, and thank you for all that you're doing to encourage and inspire people. And I'm just so proud of you guys for starting your ABC talks and continuing to encourage and inspire. And that's what it's all about, right? Is just helping other people. So congratulations to you guys on all you're doing. And thank you for inviting me on here.
And seriously, you need to read Phoebe's story. It's like
yeah, it's amazing. So thank you for agreeing to come on. Can't even tell you how grateful we are for when you said yes, you'd come on. We've been excited ever since.
Absolutely.
And it's been wonderful to have you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Phoebe, I got the message. Phebe Trotman's coming on our chat. I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, there you go. That's it, right? Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Phoebe. We love you.
Love you guys. Great to connect.
Bye for now, everyone.